real, not perfect, because perfection's not real. And guess what? Let me tell you about being real, okay? Being real means you're going to be a little weird. That's okay, because we're all a little weird, right? Seal, the singer Seal, said, we're all a little bit crazy. And that's okay too, right? But you got to own your quirks. You got to own your weirdness and own your growth, all right? And on that mission, you're not going to be for everybody, and I'm not going to be for everybody, and that's okay. That's all right. You can't try to fit everybody into your box because you're not trying to fit into theirs, because you have to remember who determines your worth, and that is you. All right. And if you need to change and alter who you are because somebody else is going to feel a little off put by it, or you're a little too much for them, or you're a little too less for them, then that's on them. See, what happens is the attachment, the insecurities, the unhealed trauma that you have latches on to things and people. Okay. And where we want to really start to change that mindset is to remember that only you can determine what your worth is, and then add tax to that. Now you've heard that before. Determine your worth and add tax. That means don't settle yourself. Stop discounting yourself. But in order to know what your worth is, you have to be real, right? Because if not, you're going to keep trying to make sure mom is happy, dad is happy, the boss is happy, the husband is happy, the wife is happy. All of these people are happy. But what about you? Because what you do every time that you do that is you diminish what your worth is. Now, that also pertains to you. So if you see somebody else with their boundaries, they're protecting their peace, they tell you no, don't push it. Don't try to get a discount on their worth. Okay, so the same thing I say to you will always pertain to you, right? But I want you to get clear in it, because one big thing that you have to remember is you are the only person on this entire planet who's going to spend 100% of your life with you. The only person on this planet that's going to spend all that time with you. You will never, and I don't use always and never much, you will never have anyone in your life 100% of the time except for the person looking back at you in the mirror. Okay? So, do we have faults? Yes. Is that okay? Yes. Is it good to work on the areas that we need to work on? Absolutely. However, as you're working on them, you must still love, honor, and respect that part of you. Because guess what? You're going to do things. You're going to have said things. You're going to hurt people. They're going to hurt you. This is part of the human race. This is part of how we live our life. And all you can do is be kind with no expectations. And you can own your stuff, but embrace your stuff. We all have quirks. And some of it is just our personality. It's not about creating this perfect version of self, because perfection's not real, guys. Like, seriously, perfection is not real. And you're creating this like bar up here that is unattainable because it's not a real destination. Perfectionism doesn't exist. So in your mind, you're creating this fictitious destination, but that destination doesn't even exist. So to embrace and to be real is to be honest with who you are and the areas that you're working on. And you have to remember, very often we lie to ourselves until we're ready to deal with it. You know, I saw something on my Instagram the other day, like in my stories or something. And it's so true, you know, is that people do not like to work on themselves, or people don't want to hear about themselves because it's much easier to blame other people, right? What if somebody says to you, hey, I think that, you know, what if you hear, I don't know, they're mean, right? You might not think you're mean. And guess what? When you have boundaries, you're going to be called mean, right? When you set boundaries, especially when you haven't had them before, you will be called mean, along with many other things on the planet, many other things. All right. And that's okay. You know, and I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is to allow yourself, let them have whatever conversation that they want to have, whatever dialogue and narrative that people have of you, whatever. Don't stop trying to change that, because so many people they don't even have remote self-love within self. So they start judging other people, right? And when you become judgmental, that's exactly what you're doing. You're not embracing yourself. You're not in a space of being real and not perfect. Listen, do the enhancements. You want to color your hair, want to get your nails done, want to get your Botox, go ahead and do that. But be real about it. Don't make it seem like it has to be part of your identity. Don't try to hide it. Like, what are we doing here? Let's be real. Now, you don't have to overshare. Okay, so that's the other thing. Let's not overshare things. We don't need to give everybody too much information and all that stuff. But you want to maintain solidarity within yourself. And when you're real with self, you have to know where you're going to burn out on certain things. Like, or can you be in a social situation, be well, and then you're just like done, and then you just flip a switch and you're just finished? Well, good, then be finished. Let that be. Now I'm going to talk about that in the next video, because just a situation that, like a teachable situation, not a teachable, like a knowledgeable situation that I just did for myself over the weekend that I want to share with you, right? Because you might be afraid to do some of those things, but until you allow yourself to make people upset, not on purpose. I mean, don't just walk around making people upset, but your actions when you're real, I promise you, will disturb some people. It's going to. When you're real, you're either going to be too much, too little, too over the top, too not this, too Hasidity, too, oh my God, like you're going to be called a lot of things, and you got to be okay with that. You got to ask yourself, why are you so worried about somebody else's approval versus the person in the mirror? And the voices that you hear in your head are not always your are not always your voice. They're other people's voices in your childhood and things like that, right? These are the people who said, oh, you didn't do that good enough. Oh, that's great that you did the kitchen, but you didn't do it just right. Oh, it's great that you got an A-, but you could have got an A+. Oh, that's okay that you did this, but that's those backhanded compliments. That's the passive aggressive. When you have that instilled into you as you're growing up, you sort of start to adopt it. And then what you don't adopt, even if you're like, I don't want to do that in my life, well, then you become almost like, I got to prove my worth. You do not have to prove your worth, but you do have to be real and be okay, because sometimes that's got to be an isolated journey. Sometimes being real means you're going to have to spend a lot of time by yourself, and really spend time by yourself. Don't just be like, well, yeah, I live by myself, so this is just what I'm doing. No. That doesn't mean that you're not distracting yourself. You're not trying to fill that void by social media scrolling. You're not trying to be with all the friends. No, this is living in your headspace for a minute. Don't live there forever, but living there in a moment to hear that inner child in you. Okay. This is so important. So important, because your triggers are your inner child. They're beautiful and I love them. You got to stop getting panicked about your triggers. You got to stop doing that, right? Because that's your inner child telling you, hey, we're worth more than what you're giving us. And yeah, your inner child is talking to you, not your inner child talking to everybody else. We already did that growing up. Maybe people didn't show up for you. Maybe it didn't go down the way you wanted it to. Maybe in your head, that childhood was just, and maybe it's facts, that childhood was just not great. But the inner child of you needs you now. Not them, not mom back then, not this person here, not the coach, not this, no. Your inner child needs you. But in order to do that, you got to be real. Don't try to say the things that people want to hear. Don't try to do the things that people want you to do. It becomes a problem, because then you lose who your worth is, and literally they tell you what your worth is. Oh, well, if you do these things, you're worthy. Oh, you didn't do those things, you're not worth anything. Don't allow that behavior. You allow that behavior. Some of it you just can't help. I mean, at this point, you haven't had the tools. You can't help yourself. But you don't have to live there at all. Like, no, we are not going to play that game. Right? They don't get to determine that. You, however, get to determine what level you want them in your life. You have people on your inner circle, which should be like a dot. And then you have the external, and then you have the acquaintances that are way out here, right? And sometimes you can like promote and demote people at any given time that you want. But you got to be clear in knowing your worth before you can assign that. Because even though they are your mother and they gave birth to you, that does not give somebody permission to drag you. That does not give somebody permission to treat you a certain way. So sometimes you might have to demote them from here to here. And sometimes they don't even need to be on any of that at all. But in order to do that, you got to know your worth. So give yourself time. Call to action here is give yourself some time to sit and reflect. Yeah, it's going to be painful. It's supposed to be. That's how growth works. it doesn't hurt, you ain't growing. I mean, that's a fact. But honestly say, what am I worth? Not what do they tell me I'm worth? What am I worth? And if you don't know what that is, holler at your girl. I got you.